Whitfield, joined by my colleague, City Councilor at Large Justin Hurst, and he will introduce our other speakers or panelists for today. I just wanted to say welcome. Thank you all for coming. We are very excited to be here with you today to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act funds. I am not going to belabor or get into those questions, and just very excited to hear what you have to say. And thank you for joining us today. Oh, and thank you, Focus Springfield. I did say it before, but I wanted to say it on the record for always being here to give the information to the community. I don't know where we would have been through COVID without you. So definitely want to thank Steve, Carrie, Brendan, and Josue. Thank you very much. And whoever else is behind the scene for Focus Springfield. Councilor Hurst is on you.
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. And I too would like to echo the sentiments that you just stated. And in terms of thanking Focus Springfield, they've done a phenomenal job throughout the pandemic, actually getting us through the pandemic, which you've already highlighted. And then I also want to thank you, Councilor Whitfield, for spearheading these listening sessions. This really was your brainchild. And when you pitched the idea to me, it was, quite frankly, it was easy for me to sign on because it just made sense. We want to ensure that those individuals, neighborhoods, businesses and nonprofits who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 actually benefit from this funding. And in order to benefit from this funding, they need to know what this funding can be used for. Just a few ground rules before we get started. Those participating in this webinar will have 2 minutes to either ask a question or make a statement as to how these funds will be spent. And I can assure you, if you go past your 2 minutes, then Councilor Whitfield will certainly, she will generously cut you off. And so we want to make sure that we're concise so that everybody that is signed up to speak this evening can speak. We will go in order of those who have registered, starting with the first 30 participants. It doesn't look like we have quite 30 as of yet. So it looks like everyone who is on this call will hopefully have an opportunity to speak. And then if there is additional time and there are more folks who have signed up outside of the 30, we will open it up for them. I also want to thank Attorney Thomas Moore, as well as Patrice Swan, for taking the time out of their schedules to be here, as they are instrumental and they are certainly the arm of the mayor's administration. And so we appreciate you all for being here today. With that said, I'll turn it over to Attorney Moore first, followed by Patrice Swan, just to introduce themselves and tell us what their roles are as it relates to the American Rescue Plan Act. And if you could just highlight your titles, it'd be greatly appreciated. And with that said, we'll start with you, Attorney Moore.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Councilor Hurst and Councilor Whitfield. Again, very happy to be here. I think it's an excellent idea, the listening tours you guys are having, and I think it's only going to help contribute to a better result for the use of the funds. So my name is Thomas Moore. I'm an attorney for the City of Springfield. My current role is as Director of the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity, which is sort of a fancy way of saying it's the Arpa spending department for the city. Director Swan and I will be working specifically to assist small businesses and nonprofits and new businesses with compliance aspects for how they're going to apply for the grant funding that's available. I'll let Mr. Swan get into that on his own, but what I'll say is just a brief overview of what we're doing for programming. So right now, we're in the middle of the public outreach phase where we're trying to hear from as many people as possible. 2 things. One, what were the greatest impacts of the pandemic so far on you personally, your business, or your community? And what do you feel are the highest priorities for use of the money to counteract those negative impacts? And when I say negative impacts, the American Rescue Plan Act, as it's called, it has a number of uses that are eligible. But the essential factor in all of those uses is there needs to be an impact from COVID-19, and it needs to be something where the use of the funds is being directed to counteract that negative impact. It can be a health impact, it could be an economic impact, but all of those eligibility requirements come down to, what did COVID do and how did it impact you? What were the costs of that impact and how do you want to use funds to counteract those costs? Now, that being said, that opens up a lot of things for eligibility. And as Councilor Hurst very correctly identified, the act is very specific and very straightforward with identifying that, the lion's share of the funding should be going to help small businesses and communities where there's been a disproportionate impact from COVID, but not just from COVID, but from pre-existing conditions where there's disproportionate impact on health results or economic results. So this money is going to go towards small businesses, local mom and pop shops, households that need assistance, seniors, and nonprofit groups that do important community work for those heavily impacted communities. And we're really referring to communities where it's a minority community and a low impact community and a low income, community. And those are really going to be the focus of the RFPs that we're developing. And that's going to be where I believe the lion's share of the funding should go. So I'm happy to be here. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the process for the RFPs that we're going to be doing, the timelines, any of the specific information, or even just general questions about the act as far as I can help. So thanks for having me, Councilor Hurst, Councilor Whitfield. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for joining us, Attorney Moore. You've always been an outstanding, upright guy. We definitely appreciate you being here. You definitely do your research and very responsive. So we know we'll get the accurate information from you. So thank you for doing this tonight. And Chase Swan.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst and Councilor Whitfield. My name is Chase Swan. I'm the Director of Technical Assistance and Compliance for the City of Springfield. I'm charged with the development of small businesses with an emphasis on minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and LGBTQ businesses. So with that being said, we want to be able to have a rolling process with the grant applications. That means it's not going to be competitive. It's going to be all-inclusive. So not having organizations compete for dollars, but we want people to collaborate with these dollars and to have sustainability. And we want to be transformative, not only for the communities, but for the city. It's over 120, I won't say the exact because I don't know the exact, I know it's over $120 million that's coming into the city for the overall city of Springfield, in each community. Small businesses, nonprofits, seniors, infrastructure and the like can be utilized to transform our city and put us into the 21st century. So I'm a city boy, I'm from Springfield, I love my city, and I want us to do well. So I'm here to work with everybody. We want to make this process seamless. We want to make this process all inclusive, and we want to encourage collaboration, innovation, and transformation. So we appreciate being here, me and my colleague. We welcome the opportunity to have this conversation, answer questions, and want to hear what the community has to say. So thank you, Councilor Hurst, Councilor Whitfield, for this invitation, and we're excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Che. We definitely appreciate you and your diligence, due diligence, and everything that you provide and bring to the table. We are excited to have a position like this, as we haven't had one before in the past, to help folks that's usually disproportionately given these resources a chance. So we thank you for the chance, and I definitely wanted to say that to you. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Councilor Hurst, we'll go ahead and get started with Jillian Hinkson. Whenever you can unmute. We do know that there's some time that you have to wait until you can unmute. So when you are able to unmute, just go ahead and get started. And if you don't really want to talk, you're just here to listen, you can also unmute and just say that. Or throw it in the chat.
Hi, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
My button actually just showed up, and I'm really just here to listen. I'm not here to say anything yet. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate you. So we'll move right along to Ms. Z Johnson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now you can hear me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, good evening. I'm Z Johnson, and I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak on behalf of my community. I am a resident of Springfield, and although I am a small business owner, I'm pretty sure a number of people have spoken on behalf of small businesses, so I won't follow that agenda tonight, but what I am advocating for is the senior population, in which I am both a professional and have personal experiences with this population. So just to give you some background information, seniors are considered age 60 and older, and the statistics have shown that in 2018, especially in Springfield, the population was about 17%. So that's in 2018. It has certainly grown since then. It's really close to 20%. So what that means is 1 in 5 people living in Springfield are a senior or are senior status. The other thing is 57% of our seniors are not married, meaning that they don't have an official partner, and 1 in 3 of them are living alone. And what's also important is 1 in 5 seniors have reported dementias. And that's why I'm here tonight to talk about and advocate for our dementia-friendly environment. So as I mentioned, 1 in 5 people have reported dementias, but we know in our underrepresented and in other communities of color that we don't necessarily report that we have family members who have dementia or who have Alzheimer's or who have some other type of dementias. We pretty much take care of our relatives and our families within our household, but then experience caregiver burden. So this is a really, really important statistic. And then not only that, but because our population, meaning 1 in 5, live in Springfield, the income, 34% or even more than 1/3 of seniors have an income less than $20,000 a year. Now, you know, in this day and time, this is data from 2018. In this day and time, you know, the income level may be about the same, but your expenses are certainly much higher. So I'm
Ms.
advocating
Z,
because,
Ms. Z, out of respect for you being in the elderly population, I gave you an extra 30 seconds. So
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to know if you had a specific question, or we'll let Attorney Moore go ahead and address your concerns.
Well, it's not a question, it's an advocacy for the senior population. I apologize for the long
that's
windedness.
okay. That's okay.
Councilor, I'd be happy just to add.
Go ahead.
There will be a specific senior RFP document that will be available where it would be dealing specifically with funds for senior assistance. So that document is being designed to be extremely user-friendly and will certainly be available for people seeking funds for many of the issues that Ms. Johnson described. So I would highly encourage you know, any senior who's interested in getting assistance in applying. And what I will say, and you'll probably hear me say this a few times, and I know the counselors have heard me say it, so they're probably tired of hearing me repeat myself, but we're going to be doing extensive advertising for the RFP documents that go out for the public. And that is the way to access the money to get these grants. And we want everyone to know about it in every part of the city and every community. And we're taking very seriously the concept that, you know, a successful advertising campaign really is at the heart of distributing the money in the most equitable way possible and getting as much money into the hands of the people it's supposed to affect as we possibly can.
Certainly appreciate that, Attorney Moore, and I certainly recognize the fact that you have double duty this evening, as I was giving testimony yesterday and was at a soccer game for one of my young ones. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule once again. I certainly know how that is. And then the second thing I want to point out is that I was wondering whether there was going to be an RFP for our seniors. So that is great to hear. And I'm sure there are a number of folks who are on this call and on previous calls who are excited by that. So with that said, we'll go on.
Before that, Attorney Moore, can you just give us a rough estimate when the first RFP is scheduled to come out, or just a rough estimate as close as you can get?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't want to talk too long. I was going to cover that at some point, but I'll just give that now. It's a good question. Yes, the first 4 RFPs will be available the week after the long holiday weekend this weekend. So Indigenous Peoples Day is Monday. By Wednesday, we will have available for people the first set of RFPs. That's going to be new business, small business, nonprofits, and I believe it'll be job creation, economic development is the last one. That being said, the remainder of the RFPs, including the senior RFP, will be available before the end of the month. So by the time we get to Halloween, every one of them will be open and out on the street. When we do the advertising, we're going to be real specific about the dates and where to go and how to get these documents. You'll be able to get them online. You'll be able to get them in person. So if you don't have the tech savvy stuff, you're sort of like me and you rely on your wife or your kids, you can go in person and get the document yourself. So
and again, we're going to reiterate, it's a rolling application process. Chase Swan is here for any technical assistance in the event that maybe you're denied for whatever reason. That's why Chase is here. He's one of the experts. Tom is also an expert. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I know that people do want to know when to expect that.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. And then I also just want to reiterate the communication piece. So I'm certainly excited that the administration, as well as Attorney Moore and Chase Swan, have identified the fact that there is a need for folks to know that these RFPs are out there. And so I know we've reiterated time and time again that we want to make sure that they go across the spectrum in terms of where they are advertising these RFPs so that the entire City of Springfield knows and not just a select group of people. So much appreciated.
And can I say one final thing, Councilor?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say, I like that Indigenous Peoples Day, like it, Attorney Moore. And they have been really open about where the funding has been going since Attorney Moore has joined the team. And so we definitely appreciate you meeting with us on most Thursdays, unless I cancel, to give us updates on the ARPA funds. And I just want the community to know you can come to those meetings if you want. You can also listen on YouTube through Focus Springfield. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move forward. We'll start with William, and then we'll move from William to Brenda Evans next.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. Well, I am an active listener in today's session, but on behalf of Junior Achievement of Western Mass, I just wanted to advocate quickly for the educational and youth development component of the fund distribution. While our budget took a significant decrease over the last 2 years, there's the blessing in disguise has been an opportunity to re-envision the way in which we can provide experiential learning, workforce readiness training, and innovation for the Western Mass economy in particular. And so we're in a process right now of putting a plan together to realize a future for junior achievement, but more importantly, that future is partnerships with the local school communities, as well as the business partners in the region, and really aligning that vision for beneficial and meaningful training for our students, whether they're looking to grow a business in the area, whether they're looking to live in the area and build a meaningful life in Springfield and throughout Western Mass. And so I just ask that when we think about education and the funds that will be allocated for that domain, that we consider the experiential learning pieces that are out there and the benefit they will have for our future leaders in the community. So with that being said, I thank you for the time, and I also thank you for the previous Q&A that answered many of the questions that I had coming into the session.
Thank you so much, William. And Ms. Holloway, I see your hand up. I'm going to go to Brenda Evans first, and then you will be next, Ms. Holloway. Ms. Evans, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I am here just to listen, but I do want to reiterate what Z. Johnson stated in regards to specific funding for our senior population, in particular, those who suffer from dementia and or Alzheimer's. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Evans. And we will move to Ms. Holloway.
Actually, I was just seeing if my technology was going to work.
It did work, and the floor is yours, Ms. Holloway.
Okay, I have a couple of questions then. I'm delighted to comment first. I'm delighted to hear that there will be sufficient advertisement so that everyone will have some opportunity to become involved in this. I'm just wondering in terms of what kind of entities might be able to utilize the funds. I'm wondering about churches. I'm wondering about various consultant groups who are doing work impacting particularly education, and as the junior achievement person mentioned, workforce readiness or personal development kinds of things. So I guess what I have to do is keep an eye out and just see if the proposals are things that I see as being appropriate for my involvement based on the particular groups that I'm a part of. And I know that the focus is that there has to have been some impact due to the virus. And we will be looking at responses that would address the negative impact. So I do have that as a backdrop. But thank you for allowing me to engage.
Thank you. And maybe either Attorney Moore or Mr. Swan, if you could once again speak to the pots of money in terms of how you envision you seeing that money being distributed, and how does that intersect with our churches, who we know were left out when it comes to the PPP funding, and I'd imagine want to be able to take advantage of this money, and certainly were impacted heavily by COVID-19.
Council, yeah, I can address part of that, and I think I'll probably leave it to Director Swan to touch on many of the nonprofit piece. I think the previous speaker had mentioned some nonprofit items, so I can let him kind of talk on that front. But the pots of money, or I guess we've been kind of getting away from that term of it, but the different groups of RFPs to apply for are going to be the small businesses, and that's going to entail people who are business owners who have less than 50 employees, and that their annual revenues are less than $500,000. So a true small company, true small business in that sense. We also are going to have a application process that's separate for new businesses. So if you're a startup and you're looking to create a new business, then we're going to have a separate application that you're going to fill out that's going to be, very specific to the needs and issues that new business and a startup would be dealing with. We're also going to have a nonprofit bucket. And again, I'll let Director Swan speak to some of the items of that I know he has a lot of personal experience with, but we're trying to cast a very wide net with the nonprofit bucket. It's going to include not just nonprofits and 501c3 corporations and things of that nature, like you think traditionally. It's also going to include religious organizations. It's going to include civic leagues, civic associations, neighborhood associations. They are all going to be eligible to apply for money for grants under that RFP. So I'm hoping, if there's a number of groups that the speaker is involved with, if they're all in the capacity of a not-for-profit capacity, they should be eligible to apply for that particular RFP. And that will be out during the first round of RFPs, which starts after the holiday, but will continue until the end of 2024. So it's a considerable amount of time that you would have to get a proposal together to put in. And I think a speaker had asked a question on the chat about the requirement for any professional services or anything like that for the application process. Just emphatically and definitively say, you will not need to hire anyone to apply for or obtain this grant fund. And that we are making this process, Shay and I are working on this process specifically so that is accessible to the lay person. It is not meant for the professional to respond to. If you're a business owner, you're probably going to have to give us more documentation than you will if you're a senior that's applying. There's going to be certain, documents you'll probably need to submit as a business, but those are going to be the bare minimum. And we're going to have an application process where you're really going to get a document from the city that, it's a couple pages and it'll have fill in the blank type stuff and check the box type stuff, where if you fill that out and you complete the form, you're going to be essentially eligible for this award. And if for some reason you submit the form and it gets, evaluated by our committee and they say, well, you're missing, this piece here or this piece here, Che, Swan and I come into action at that point, and we help you kind of get your application to a point where it's going to, be more successful for the award. And I'll turn over to Che just to kind of maybe give more detail on that front.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Speaking to the nonprofit and the small business sectors, as previously stated, it's going to be an exciting time, as I said, exciting so many times, because the collaboration piece instead of the competitive piece will foster the development, the sustainability, whereas we all know we have small businesses and nonprofits that are great at what they do in their core competencies. But we also have weaknesses and competencies that are outside of our purview, whereas the collaboration will foster not only being able to strengthen your core competencies, but to leverage other nonprofits or other small businesses that has competencies outside of your purview to strengthen your business as well, as you will strengthen theirs. So the collaboration piece, I believe, is critical and key to raise everybody in this process, as far as not being competitive and not holding your intellectual properties or holding what you do well to yourself, but to share it and share it alike, as everybody else will do, and we'll all do better in that process. So again, it's an exciting time, and I implore you guys to think big, to be innovative, and to collaborate with your other stakeholders in your space, in your industry, to think about collective sustainability for programs, and to be able to leverage competencies that you don't have right now, and to strengthen your core competencies as well.
Thank you. I have a quick question. If you received any type of other funding from the city as a small business, are you still eligible? And a lot of these organizations are going to fall into multiple buckets. New, nonprofit, capital, can they get more than one? Job readiness, can they get more than one grant as an organization?
Counselor, those are both excellent questions. And the answers, what I'll tell you is, if you have received assistance from another government program, it does not make you ineligible to receive the ARPA funding. So what the regulations the Treasury Department's come out with, they say they're not going to duplicate funding. So if you received, say, like PPP, for example, and you're a business that used it for its purpose and you got the debt forgiven, you can't file an application for the same period of time for that same payroll expense. You can file for additional time that's not part of the money you got. If you applied for, a grant program from the government that gave you money for a certain period of time that you had listed, that's the period of time that you can't claim again for ARPA. So you can't essentially duplicate your benefit. But if you got it for something else, and now you're applying for ARPA money on a different time frame, you are allowed to receive those funds. There's nothing that prohibits that, and there's nothing within our process that's going to stop you from getting the money that way. And what I'll also say, Counselor, to the second question is, I'm sorry, what was the second question? Geez, I had the answer on the tip of my tongue. I just forgot. I'm sorry.
If you fall into multiple buckets, are you limited to?
Yes, right. Sorry. So if you happen to fit a couple buckets, which you're very right, there's going to be a couple buckets that are going to be eligible for, say, if you're a business, or say if you're a nonprofit. There is no limitation to the number of applications you can submit. So you could submit an RFP application to every single, solicitation, theoretically, I think, if you were a senior who owned a business and a nonprofit. And, if you had a bunch of them on the list, you might be able to apply to all. But what I'll say is most people are going to be probably one or two.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Attorney Moore.
I'm sorry, Lamont, I added you by mistake, but we'll just keep you here for now. But I think James was next, right?
Yes, we'll go with Mr. G, and then we'll follow Lamont Clemens can go after Mr. G. James, the floor is yours.
Where'd James G go?
Did we lose James? Okay, so we'll move on to you, Lamont.
I think he said he could not unmute.
Okay. So we'll circle back to him. Lamont, the floor is yours.
Oh, there you go.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
I'm doing well. I actually was I actually have a whole lot of questions just regarding what we have going on. But I guess one of the things I'll just ask about real quickly is just.
Well, you have 2 minutes just because you wasn't here.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Just all right. So are the ARPA funds available for I've seen a lot of legislation or a lot of information about home ownership and not home ownership, about residencies. And if you were to have like a building that was available that had 40 units, would you be able to utilize these funds to help people to have homes in the places to live in the area, apartments?
Yeah, it's a great question. A big focus of the ARPA funding, a big focus of what the city's going to do with the grant funding is to assist with housing and housing development. So it's a critical need in the area. I'm sure, a lot of speakers and people listening will agree. There's a serious housing shortage in Springfield and in parts of the Pioneer Valley. So the city is very much going to encourage housing development. That will be a separate RFP. So if you're a developer who's looking to do something in the context of a housing redevelopment or putting more housing units online, it could be something, simple as a few single family homes or multifamily homes, or if you wanted to do like you're talking about a complex that has a number of units. That's all going to be stuff that we're going to be accepting applications for. And what I'll say is this: the guidelines around ARPA are that the funding can certainly be used for housing, but what I would encourage everybody to do, and what Director Swan and I are going to help applicants with the best we can, is making the connection between the impact COVID has had on our housing market. And to the extent that COVID has exacerbated an already existing problem within the Springfield market for housing, that's going to be, I think, essential to, anybody who's looking to apply for that type of RFP. You're going to want to make that kind of argument, and we're going to be here to give you clarification on that where necessary, but that's really the focus of it. So if there's a way to make those connections and say, I'm about to put on 40 units online because, COVID has made it harder for people to find, an affordable place to live, and this is going to contribute to adding to affordable housing on the market, or is going to contribute to adding, quality market rate housing, to contribute to further economic growth in the city. All of those are good arguments to make, and I would say it is very much an eligible use, and it's strongly encouraged for people to apply to that RFP.
Okay, that's fine.
Did you have one more question, because you only used 34 seconds?
Oh, okay. So I guess also with the use of the funds, and I'm understanding that they all have to be kind of tied back to COVID for certain. But just for some of the other, well, I guess I'd piggyback off of this. So with these funds, you could actually purchase the property and purchase and leverage the renovation as well for the right purpose, correct?
Yeah, I think theoretically it could be used for that purpose, right? Housing redevelopment. So you're looking at it and going, I want to acquire property, or I have property that's just so, it's just not profitable to turn around for housing reuse. That's where we'd be looking to kind of go in there and say, is this going to produce housing to help us combat this issue? And, to the extent that you're looking to purchase property, what I would say again is do your best to tie that specific expense to, an impact from COVID. And there are ways to make those arguments. So, it's not like that's something that can't be done. So it is an eligible use the way I interpret the act.
you.
Okay.
One more, you all set,
Okay.
Lamont?
Yeah, I'm all set. I got some other things framed. It's gonna take a little more time. So
Okay,
it's all
so
right.
we'll circle back if we have more time after we get through everyone else.
Well, and I'll also say this is a
Okay.
good opportunity to say, if somebody doesn't get a chance to ask a question they would like to ask for me or for Director Swan, they are able to do that directly through the city's website. If you go to the Department of Recovery and Business Continuity, which is on the city's webpage, that has an email link if you want to contact the department, and it goes directly to me, and I'll be able to respond and answer any questions people have. So if we are kind of constrained for time, if people have another question you think of when we're off, that's the way to do it. The actual email, I can give it to people now if they want to, if they can write it down, or if they're listening later on, they can write it down. It is the initials for the department, which are drbc@springfieldcityhall.com. So drbc@springfieldcityhall.com. And if you send an email to there, it's going to go directly to my email, and I will respond directly to you.
Thank you, Attorney Moore. Next, we will have Jennifer Wallace Johnson, followed by Joshua Hunt. Ms. Johnson, the floor is yours.
Hi there, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
How you guys doing?
Excellent.
Good, and you?
I'm good. I don't know why my camera's not on, but I'm really here just listening, but I'm here on behalf of Board of Directors for Springfield Ballers Youth Sports Organization. I know James couldn't get on, so we really just want to try and gauge whether, we may be able to apply for this funding and gather ideas on the ways in which we might qualify being a nonprofit youth sports organization. So if you all have any more advice or any more details to shed light on that, we would appreciate it.
Che, did you want to give your
Yeah,
contact information? Or
the process is pretty straightforward. We're making it as seamless and as uncumbersome as possible. So apply as the Ballers as a nonprofit in whatever program or collaborative effort or whatever you guys are doing individually, and we'll shepherd you through the process.
because we know through COVID, those youth suffered. They weren't able to get out there and play their sports, do their arts or anything. And so we can definitely tie back sports organizations. Plus they do more than that. They do mentoring and our children lost some time in school. And so definitely Jennifer, put that application in. If you need help, contact Che or Attorney Moore. Director Swan, that's what Attorney Moore said, but Che to me, and contact those guys.
I'm always formal. I'm sorry.
I know, and we can help you, or they can help you through the process. I can't help you. I don't know, but they can.
I was going to say, and Councilor Whitfield, you make an excellent point when we start talking about obesity and heart disease and all of these underlying conditions that have led to the disproportionate impact, especially on folks of color. One of the ways to get around that is to start early, and certainly making sure that our youth are active is one way in which we can do that. So I would concur with Councilor Whitfield as well as Che, and let's get those applications in and encourage others to get those applications in as well.
You didn't have to call me out for gaining weight during COVID, Justin.
Councilor, I was just going to say, you very much, I was going to speak to that point, and you said it better than I could have. I will just also say, I encourage applicants within the context we're talking about to also stress the impact that their use of the funds is going to have on those disproportionately impacted communities, because that's a big factor of what we're evaluating. So if you're servicing a low-income community, a minority community, and your programming is going to help them, please put that into your application. It's going to be a big part of it.
That is excellent. Thank you all. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. And just to piggyback off of the counselors and my colleague, Attorney Moore, children's mental health is the biggest situation that we've come out of COVID. So definitely, if you're dealing with children, include that as well.
Absolutely.
I hope y'all picking up on these tidbits.
So thank you, Jennifer. We appreciate you sharing, and we will now turn it over to Mr. Hunt, who I see is unmuted and ready to go.
How you doing? My name is Joshua Hunt. I own a business called Exotic Sensations out of Eastfield Mall. My question is, if I was affected by COVID, and what I would like to do with the money is open like a storefront business. Would I ask for that? You're saying a particular amount of money to be able to open from a small business to try to make that business bigger with the hopes of like employing people within the community?
That's a fantastic question. I couldn't have really said it any better. Yeah, that's an excellent application for the funds as you look for small business. That is very much what I had in mind drafting a lot of what we're talking about. Is if you're somebody who owns a small business and you knew that your small business is ready to expand, or you had plans to make this happen, and then COVID hits, and you get whacked, where you're basically keeping yourself afloat off of what you have in the bank, and you can't expand, and you can't buy new equipment, you can't hire new staff. And that was your impact. And now you're looking to get some funds because now you're ready to roll, and you do want to have the storefront, and you do have everything in place to go. Well, that's something you should definitely apply for a small business. That's going to be something that fits into what we're doing. So what would happen is we would look at the application. There's a short turnaround period, probably about 3 to 4 weeks, where the committee looks at it and they match it up to the markers that are on the RFP. And those are, again, they're pretty straightforward. And the application gives you a document that you just fill out, kind of gives you a chance to explain just what you very briefly explained to us. And once you submit that, 3 to 4 weeks later, you'll get the results. In all likelihood, with what you're talking about, you're going to be getting an award. But say your application has something that's missing, or you just have one thing you need to include you didn't, then it'll be something that Director Swan contacts you on, and he'll kind of go over what that is and make sure that you can, get your thing to the finish line. And then you'll get what's called a grant contract, which is a forgivable grant, essentially, where you're not required to match money. So you don't have to come up with any money yourself, and you're not required to pay anything back in a loan form, because if you use the money for what you're supposed to use it for in the application, the money is forgiven. So that's, very much something you should think about looking into. And the small business RFP will be available next week at some point. I'm hopeful at the very beginning of the week, but at some point next week, it will be available for the public. So you'll be able to take a look exactly what it is.
All right, thank you.
If I could just add to that, Attorney, and I see you want to speak as well, Councilor Whitfield, but if we could just, is there an amount in which businesses can ask for? Is there a limit? And then what happens if in year 2 or year 3, the businesses sort of assess where they're at and say, you know what, I could use a little bit more money. I might not have asked for the amount that I probably could have used to make sure that it's sustainable. Is there an opportunity to apply again? Can either one of you speak to that?
That's a good question. And yes, there is. That's right. So the way I look at it is there's room within this process for a business, or even, or I would say nonprofit, I guess individuals too, to apply in the beginning and say, I have a proposal for the use of the funds that combat this impact from COVID. And this is what I want to use for. And this is the amount I'm asking for. The amount, there is no cap to it. The Treasury Department doesn't place a limit on individual awards for the money, but it is pretty specific about saying the money has to be tied in a reasonable way to the impact that's claimed. So if the impact is a small impact and you ask for a ton of money, the chances are that the city will only be able to give you a small amount of it. But if you're saying there's a large impact and you're looking for an amount that's proportionate to that impact, that's allowable. So what we're hoping is when someone comes in with a proposal, say like the discussion we just had with a small business, they're looking to put a new business or a small business into a storefront and expand. They're going to have a set budget number. They're going to have either equipment expenses, some staffing expenses, and a construction budget, or whatever they're going to do to do the upgrades they need. And then they're going to have some leasing and some rental and utility expenses for operations. But they're going to have a budget. They'll have a real expense thing, and we'll be able to go through it and figure out how much money is needed for the project. And that'll be essentially determinative of what that amount looks like. What I would say is this: I don't foresee any of the awards being massive amounts of money. Like I think of massive amounts. I mean, geez, for me, thousands of dollars, a massive amount of money. But in the context of the 123 million we have, it would be millions of dollars going out the door for like one recipient. I don't foresee that happening unless a proposal comes in where it could sustain that under the Treasury's regulations. It would take quite a bit to get there. And so for me, the Treasury Department designed this for small groups, for small businesses, for individuals, for that type of use. And that's what it's supposed to be for. large ticket items really fit under something that's authorized, which is in the infrastructure category. And we haven't had a chance to talk about this, so I'll just briefly say it would be something in the context of a big broadband project for the city or a big water and sewer type project within the city. And those are the two most eligible categories. And those wouldn't really be RFP things. And that would be something that there would have to be a lot of discussion about how much went into a project like that. Broadband and internet connectivity, smaller projects maybe make a lot of sense. There's talk of larger broadband, and that price tag is quite high. So there's a lot of discussion that have to go into that. So I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but I hope that addressed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it did. But so when you talk about that, and when we think about capital projects, those are kind of big ticketed. So I'm gonna go back to the example that Lamont had, like to purchase a building and then renovate it is pretty large, especially if you think about 40 plus units or 40 a little less units. That can definitely run into the $1 million range.
Yeah, and you know, and I think that's sort of where it comes into say the act authorizes the use of the money for many purposes, but it also says, you know, you're trying to use it in the most, you know, efficient and equitable way possible. So you're spreading it out. You're not trying to use it for giant purchases or for giant construction projects. You know, things that, you know, $10 million to somebody in my mind is so unrealistic. It makes no sense to do anything near that range. It would be something to be way, way, way less than that. And if you're doing capital projects or public space improvements, that category potentially could have some larger items. But I think those projects are going to be coming out of a lot of what we're doing for public outreach. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about how feasible using the ARPA money is for many of those. Because many of the capital project stuff that I've seen through public outreach, there's a lot of infrastructure that's not related to ARPA. And for example, like it would be like paving a street or repairing sidewalks or fixing traffic signals, things like that. They're not always something that you could really realistically connect to COVID. And so, you know, that pool is going to be a limited amount. The things that qualify for those categories are not going to be a ton. So I guess I'll leave it at that. That's the most restrictive in my mind, is like infrastructure or capital stuff. It's pretty restrictive about what you could really do with it. So it's going to be a limited amount that we can get onto that list.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the next person on the list, and then we'll circle back to some of the questions you're putting into the chat, but we definitely want to hear from everyone. And I think Leslie Parks was next.
Thank you, Tracy and Justin. Excellent webinar. Most of the answers that I had, first off, I am with Jalupa Productions, which is a theater company, which we have been affected by COVID because we haven't been able to do live shows and so forth and so on. But also as a church member of Martin Luther King Presbyterian Church, looking into it for information as far as our programs and things like that. You all have covered quite a bit and have answered quite a few questions that I already had. And one of them was the funding cap, if there was a funding cap. Also too, is there a turnaround time for this first rollout that you're doing? I was wondering if you had, you know, a time schedule for that. And I think everything else you've kind of answered for me already. So if you'll just answer that question there, that would be great.
Sure, yes, I'd be happy to. The anticipated time frame for release of all of the RFPs is by the end of this month. So the first 4 are going to be made available at some point next week. And those 4 will be new business assistance, small business assistance, nonprofit assistance, and job creation / economic development. And those will be the first 4. The next 5 will be available by the end of the month. And those comprise housing redevelopment / housing development, senior assistance. Let's see, Che, I might have to help me. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Oh, okay.
What are the other 2?
Where
Capital
we
projects,
at?
public space
housing.
I did that one, yeah.
Capital projects, seniors, neighborhoods.
Oh yeah, there you go. I can't believe I forgot that one. Yeah, the actual household / neighborhood assistance. So that would be more for individuals and households or groups of households applying.
I am so
and those-
excited about all this. Oh my gosh. So
the end of the month of October is when everything will be available. By then, everything will be available. But the turnaround will be by the time you submit an application, the day you submit it, it'll be 3 to 4 weeks before you get the result of your application. So there's going to be some time because there's so many of them that are going to come in. We have these committees that are going to go over the submissions. They're going to be rating them according to the scores sheets that we kind of show everybody what we're, how we rate these things. You'll be able to see how it works. And then when you get the result, one or two things are going to happen. One, you're going to get your grant award. So at that point, it takes time for the city to sort of cut a check, and that takes like, say, a 2-week period. So if your application is everything in order and you're totally eligible and you submit it, 5 weeks from the day of submission, you could have a check in your hand for the grant award. And that, hopefully will be the case for most of the applications you receive. Some of the more complicated, larger ones that come in, those might take a little more time for us to get through. But the majority of them will be that way. The other thing that might happen is you get a notice from us saying, we reviewed the application, you're eligible, but you were not able to get the award because, you need this document, or you missed this thing that you didn't give us, or something like that, or you need to explain this use a little bit better. And at that point, you will be allowed to sort of consult with, my department, really me and Director Swan, depending on what category you're going to fall into. And we're going to give you assistance to help figure out what it is that the committee said that you needed that's not there, or what it is that, if there's a document you needed to fill out, we can give you assistance on the technical side. And we're hopeful that that will then result in people just resubmitting the application, going, through the evaluation and then obtaining the award. So it's a rolling process where if you don't get it the first 5 times, you apply the 6th time and you're in good order, you get it. So it's not the sort of thing where you get knocked out and there's one winner and everybody else is second place / last place. It's going to be where hundreds of these grant awards go out the door.
So thank you for saying that. I think that answered the missing the availability of assistance because the focus has been on Maple Heights 6 Corners. So this is going to be broader. It's going to be citywide. So there's no cap on the areas or anything like that. It's going to be citywide, and the turnaround time is until the funds run out or until we reach 2024.
You're correct, Council. The obligation period is to obligate the funds by the end of 2024 and to spend all the funds by the end of 2026.
So it'll be a rolling application process. So, and you were very generous saying that the city will get the check out in 2 weeks. I wouldn't hold my breath on that since I did work in finance, but wishful thinking, we'll pray on it.
And I would also be curious as to, who else is going to assist you all with this? Because the reality is, if you're talking about 100 applications, and then you're also talking about communicating back to those applications who might have fallen short for whatever reason, and then folks can resubmit multiple times. It just seems like to me there needs to be a number of folks addressing the administrative issues that are going to come with this process. And I only see 2 of you. And my other hope is that your information is go ahead.
We're both in the process of hiring and filling the bullpen right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great. I was gonna say, Councilor, you're thinking just like we're thinking. Yeah, there's a wave of administrative stuff we're gonna have to take care of. So we're staffing up. Director Plant has been sort of on that task for a while now, realizing that the amount of information that's going to come in is going to be substantial. And yes, it's going to take more than Director Swan and I, although I don't know, Director Swan might be able to do it all on his own. He does a lot. I've seen the energy this man has early in the morning, and it's impressive.
Great to know. Council Whitfield, I think we have Lorenzo Gaines, who is next in the queue to ask a question.
Hi, thank you all for having me. I'm with them on behalf of the Miracle Mark Foundation, but I'm also a small business owner, No Sleep Productions. I'm curious as to, after hearing this conversation, is it going to be, I know it's going to be a bunch of check boxes, and I'm going to assume that you would probably have to be up to date with all your taxes, parking tickets, excise taxes, or anything relative to that. And to Councilor Hurst's question, will there be someone available if there are a large number of applications and people are just having technical difficulties? I know that the attorney offered to respond by email, and I'm really excited for this to roll out. So I have two questions. One is, they're going to be technical assistance available, and then two, as a small business owner that makes marketing and film that could help other businesses, are we able to make capital expenditures like computers?
So two very good questions. So the first question, I'll leave the second question to Director Swan, but I'll take the first one. Yes, hardware expenses, equipment expenses are absolutely eligible. And the way I would look at that is, if you're a business that was impacted by COVID, where you're a small business, you were looking to have purchase of equipment, you get into the pandemic, and now all of a sudden you're struggling to pay, basic expenses to stay afloat. Now that you're, ready to make the purchases again, you're looking to expand, and, you're basically counteracting some negative impacts by looking for these, equipment that's essential for your business. So I think that is an eligible expense. I would look at that in the context of the small business RFP. For sure. It sounds like you would be in that category for sure. And Director Swan, I don't know if you wanted to handle that, the first one he was asking.
Definitely. Thank you, Attorney Moore. On the front end, you'll have technical assistance as far as you refer to, the check boxes in dealing with the application process. And on the back end, if you so choose, your business will have technical assistance as far as leveraging ancillary resources from other businesses in your space, other companies that you can provide value to, and that can provide value to you as well. So we'll have a list of companies. We'll be dealing with numerous organizations, and so there'll just be a flow of ideas as well. So you'll have technical assistance on the front end, as far as us shepherding you through the process and making sure that you can procure the funds. And then on the back end as well, if you need ideas as far as to build out your business model, or to innovate your business model, or to influence collaboration where that's outside of your core competencies, we'll be there for assistance as well.
Well, thank you both. I'm looking forward to working with you both for the betterment of the city, to help Springfield become a great place to work, rest, and play. This is an exciting opportunity, exciting time, not just for the residents, but also for our community leaders to help people get a leg up in this very competitive economy. So I'm excited to continue to grow my business here in the Springfield 413 area. And again, I look forward to working with you guys hand in hand to make the funds get put to good use. Quick closing question for a nonprofit. So the Miracle Mark Foundation is a nonprofit, registered nonprofit, and we provide free swimming lessons. And so what, in terms of programming, if anything, and or hardware, again, meaning like, let's say if we want to buy 1,000 life vests, or we want to buy AED defibrillators and put them at local swimming facilities, is that something that would be part of the conversation?
It's a great question, and I think to Director Swan's point that he was just discussing, there's definitely room for a cross kind of collaboration for funding in that vein. And I'll let Che speak a little more specifically on that front. But I will speak to the other part of it, which is, again, something like the life vest. If you're expanding programming that's essentially in place to assist, low-income minority communities, and it's a program that involves education and health and wellness, those are all going to be eligible for funding. Really what you're going to want to focus on in your application is sort of what we've been kind of harping on the whole time, which is coming up with the narrative and a sort of description of the impact that COVID had, and then tying that to the idea that, well, now is my time in my availability to provide this service to this very underserved community that has been completely, non-served during the pandemic, or something to that effect. And I think that would very much fit into the scale of eligibility. But Che, do you want to just kind of go into talk about the swimming piece specifically with the pool? Because I know there's some interesting things going on that front.
Oh, yeah. So there that has been a common theme as far as neighborhoods and pools and Black and brown children and drowning. So that is a serious concern. Swimming is not only a sport or athletic or a healthy activity, it's a life skill. And our children need to know that. So it's definitely eligible, and it's one of the ones that I think is greatly appreciated. And to be able to provide wraparound services with other organizations to incorporate their children into the fold is very necessary. So there are some conversations going around about opening pools and around swimming safety in our minority communities.
Well, thank you. You both have answered my questions thoroughly. And I'm, again, very excited. Look forward to working in partnership with all of you. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, who do we have next, Counselor?
Is Michelle, and I think I've given her the ability to speak.
Hi, sorry. I am just following up with Jennifer's comments for the Springfield Ballers. I just had one question because we recently broke off into our own nonprofit this year. Previously, we were tied to the Boys and Girls Club. So would we still qualify for these funds if we're a new nonprofit in 2021?
That is a great question. I was hoping somebody's going to ask something like that. So thank you. Yes. What we're trying to do is say experience is obviously a big part of any evaluation when you're an organization applying for funding, right? You know, you're going to have to prove at some level you have your organization structured correctly, that the money's going to go where you say it's going to go, and you have controls in place, etc. But there are many times where what you're talking about occurs, where somebody who's worked in a nonprofit for a long time, has great experience in the field, branches off and kind of forms their own organization. In that case, you're going to be eligible because the way we're making the RFPs, it's going to be either the organization itself or the principles of the organization. So if you're running the organization, you're going to be able to use your personal experience to account for what would normally be just organizational experience. So in the case of what you're talking about, where you're splitting from an existing recognized nonprofit and creating a brand new one, as long as you're incorporated as the nonprofit and you're ready to go with your filings, you can apply and you'll be able to cite your experience at your other post as part of that requisite for the application.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So
Thanks for asking.
Can you still answer that question for a newer nonprofit, maybe not like Springfield Ballers, who has had a lot of experience or data behind the work
Sure,
that
yeah.
they do, but they were going to open, maybe couldn't because of COVID, couldn't get their feet, couldn't get their thing going?
Yeah, Counselor, that's a good question. And I think I sort of alluded to that in my answer, where it is this sort of thing where you don't want to put an onerous requirement that something has to be in business for a long period of time to be eligible. And I definitely have been struggling back and forth with just how much we say for something like a nonprofit organization. So what I think will end up happening is the requirement for being in business for a period of time is going to be very, very low. And it'll essentially be, is your experience in the field, do you have enough requisite experience as the operator of the nonprofit, even if it is a brand new one? If your job gave you that experience and you didn't operate within a nonprofit, you could still cite that as being able to give you the requisite experience to get the grant. So we're trying to make it so that if somebody has a great idea for a nonprofit and they want to use the Arpa funds to kind of start up that business, they'll be able to do that. And, whether right now I don't see that fitting into the new business RFP, I think what I'm going to do is try to make the nonprofit RFP speak to that issue and then specifically be able to make that eligible. It's a great question because it's something that's come up a bunch, and I've been trying to figure out a way to make those entities, those kind of newborn entities, so lack of a better word, able to access the funds, because there are going to be a lot of great ideas that come out of this where people are going to say, hey, I have something like, Director Swan says very accurately, something innovative. I have something that's new. I want to try this, and it's a nonprofit. I'm going to provide this type of service. I have a design, I have an idea, I have a business plan. Those should be eligible concepts under ARPA. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that they can access funding. And that's going to be something where we'll just have to deal with the idea that sometimes you're going to have to maybe take a while to sit down and get the plan solidified, where, you know, we'll be able to sit with you and kind of go over what it is you're trying to do and get the application to a point where it's fully realized. And then I think you could easily be able to fund something like that through ARPA.
Director Swan, is that something you would help these organizations get together? The back end accounting and all that business plans and stuff?
Definitely. If we don't have the resources, we'll be able to direct them to be able to get the resources free of charge, as far as that's concerned. The other part of it is I want to piggyback off what Attorney Moore intimated earlier, as far as scope and scale of projects, as far as how much the ask is going to be. And if you're a newer organization, that's great, as he intimated. However, you want to be able to understand and be mindful of your ask and your experience in the field commiserate with your ask. And if you need to leverage more for innovation or a program that you feel like can be scaled up, that's where the collaboration comes in as well for organizations that have been in that space or doing that work. So I just be mindful of the ask and the scale and your experience in that space.
Thank you. And some people aren't going to understand the scale and everything. And so, you know, that.
How large you want your project to be? Sorry, I apologize.
Don't just try to pack everything in there that you may not be able to handle.
I'm sorry, Counselor.
Attorney Moore. Sorry.
It's a great point that the director made, and I think that what I'll say is this: don't be afraid to ask for a lot, but in all likelihood, you know, you're not going to get every dime you're asking for, and that sort of lends itself to the concept like we're talking about. We're trying to make the money spread around. What we want to do is make sure the concept that you're applying for will work with the money we give you. So in other words, we're not going to try to shortchange the money. So we'll give you half of what you need for this project. You know, we're going to fund the project to make sure it works. But at the same time, if you're asking for a number of things, we may only be able to give you half of what you're asking for if it's something that's not like a complete construction or something like that. You know, in a lot of ways, you're going to get as much as we can possibly give you, but it may not be the whole amount. So ask for a lot, no problem with that. Just because you ask for a ton doesn't mean you're not going to be eligible to get an award. So we'll see how that works in the process.
And I think the other thing that I just would like to add to that is that you probably have a number of folks or organizations who are doing nonprofit work, but don't necessarily have that 501c3 status. And I know personally that it's not easy to get, and it takes a long time. And I think oftentimes what might happen with folks is that because it's so cumbersome, you know, you probably stop midway through the process, or at least it appears cumbersome. And so it would be helpful, Che, if we had folks that were identified to potentially assist individuals who want to get to that point in terms of, you know, that nonprofit status to make the work that they're doing more sustainable. So I would go ahead.
That's an excellent point. And that's again, I'm gonna keep beating the dead horse: collaborate, and be able to strengthen yourself outside of your core competencies. Not only that, once you deal with an organization that has a 501c3 or whatever certifications or status you need to be able to operate in that space, they can be your fiscal conduit. They can deal with your administrative needs as far as incorporating you into that business world to be certified in that space. And once you are, you don't have to use them anymore as far as your administrative purposes, but can still collaborate as far as growing the business outside of your core. So that's an excellent point. Because there's a lot of groups that do great work who don't have nonprofit status or have status to be able to be certified in their industry. However, we'll be dealing with a litany of organizations in the nonprofit small business world who have those competencies and will be willing to assist, help, and lend their administrative services to be the fiscal conduit to help you grow into that space.
Absolutely. Certainly. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next individual. I think Nicole dropped off. So we'll move on to Tiffany.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for having this opportunity. I don't have any questions or concerns, just ideas. So thank you for making yourself accessible to hear them. Hi, my name is Tiffany Alicia, and I'm the founder and president of Black and Brown Wall Street, a community organization focused on the economic development and financial literacy of the Black and Brown community of Springfield. Springfield, Massachusetts has been in an economic recovery since the financial crisis of 2007. This financial crisis was extended through the stock market crash of 2008, the tornado natural disasters of 2011, the failed commercial.
Tiffany,
Yes.
I want to hear you, and I want people at home to hear you, because I think you're saying some amazing things. We'll give you the necessary amount of time that you need. Just slow down a little bit, please.
I know City Councilman Whitfield don't play, so I just wanted to get it all in. But thank you for your permission to slow down.
We're gonna stay to 7:30, so take a little bit of time.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
I started your
Whitfield.
time over.
I appreciate it. Okay, once again. So I'll start from the second paragraph. Springfield, Massachusetts has been in an economic recovery since the financial crisis of 2007. This financial crisis was extended through the stock market crash of 2008, the tornado natural disasters of 2011, the failed commercial investment in a casino, and currently the global pandemic has maximized our issues. We must now maximize our response through a dynamic and transformational approach. One potentially transformational investment is the purchase of the Springfield Plaza, also known as the Liberty Street Plaza, for the establishment of a Black and Brown commercial business district. The current owners have defaulted on a $30 million loan during COVID after promising a full revitalization of the business district in 2014. This failure has had multifaceted consequences, including loss of national vendors, loss of employment opportunities, as well as the development of a negative cultural impact for the Liberty Heights neighborhood. This property is going to foreclosure and is being auctioned for $250,000. A purchase like this can sustainably change the trajectory of our economy if supported and implemented strategically. From a historical perspective, we have many examples of how investing in Black and Brown local economies can be culturally world-changing, as well as financially thriving. From the original Black Wall Street of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the historic economic entities of the Harlem Renaissance, we know this works. According to the 2019 census, Springfield is 65.9% Black, Hispanic, and Latino. We are the majority, and our community's industry, resources, and overall economy should reflect that. The family is in survival mode throughout our communities. The Arpa funding is an opportunity to triage the specific needs of individuals and businesses on the local level in a depth that we could have never done before. For example, we should be giving relief for individuals and families, small business development, mental health and wellness resources, and supplemental wages for essential staff who did not get COVID resources, like unemployment and things of that nature, like our educators, truckers, and medical staff. This should be followed by implementation support and technical assistance to ensure the maximizations of resources allotted. We have led the marches, we have made the Facebook posts, we have painted the streets. We've literally knelt in kente cloth. It's time for ARPA funding to be allocated to all the places where pandering to the Black and Brown vote once was. Thank you so much for your consideration.
We were never gonna stop that speech. That was fantastic. My gosh, can I get a copy?
Thank you so much.
Yes, no?
Tiffany.
No?
I don't know if there was anything there that either Che or Attorney Moore would want to comment on. It sounds like there was a lot there, and hopefully they took away a lot.
It was the kente cloth for me.
Great speech. Great speech.
Painted the streets too. I like that. I like that.
Thank you, Tiffany. So with that said, we will move on to
Valeda, I think.
Valeda, sorry.
I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm sorry too.
Valeda, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So I thought you answered my question, Tracye, but I guess I'll ask it again about the elderly being able to receive funds to assist them with renovations that they need to make in their properties. It's very hard for them to find reliable people. It's just very difficult. So that was my question.
Val?
Yeah.
I never knew your real name.
Oh, I'm Shayla's mom.
I know who you are.
I have a name.
Right, Shayla's mom.
I'm Shayla's mom. So yeah, so that's kind of my question, and what exactly would they be able to do? Like they need bathroom and things like that. Like is the walls, there's all kinds of things, live in an old neighborhood in a over 100-year-old house. Things.
You want to take that, Tom, or you want me to?
I'll take a quick shot at it. I think there will be certainly applications that will come in through the senior assistance RFP that will deal with many items that seniors are looking for help with. And due to COVID, you could make an argument about repair work that could get done to a home based on the expenses that it costs and the lack of ability to do that during a pandemic. For seniors in particular and people on fixed incomes, that could be a good argument. And there's also, I think, going to be some room for people to apply when we're talking about doing say facade upgrades or foundational repairs and things of that nature. There's going to be some housing programming that comes out of the city where we're going to be expanding some very successful existing programs that are already operating in the city to be able to give assistance to homeowners. And I definitely foresee that being something that seniors could access as well.
Can I piggyback off that?
Yep.
Hey, Valeda, how you doing?
Hey, Che, how are you?
I'm well.
I mean, we live in Upper Hill, and it seems like Six Corners and Maple was getting like all of the attention. And
Gotcha.
so we couldn't, we knew the guy that was running that one of those programs you were talking about, and he said they might expand into your neighborhood. We're not sure.
Gotcha. Well, so the issue is there are CDBG eligible neighborhoods that have a certain income level, and there are ones that are not. And so the CDBG eligible neighborhoods get the resources because there's a much lower income level in those neighborhoods. However, to piggyback off Attorney Moore, we're looking at expanding the programs for seniors, for residents, because we have an older housing stock in the city. We understand that. And there needs to be upgrades to our housing stock. And there's certain upgrades that individuals cannot do or take on those lifts alone, whether it's a roof or a porch or things of that nature. And so Economic Development Director Tim Sheehan, Attorney Moore, myself, CAFO TJ Plante are looking at strategies to be able to get finances to those homeowners who might make too much money to be eligible for CDBG funding, but we know that they need the funding as well, and we want to definitely help out our city housing stock. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
And tell all the kids I say, well, not so much kids no more, but tell them I say hello.
Look.
Yes, tell them hello.
I started over. I've got a 7-year-old in my house, so y'all pray for me.
Oh, gotcha. Well, tell the kids to say hello.
Y'all pray for me because I'm not 30 anymore. So y'all just pray real hard for me.
Thank you, Che, and thank you, Valeda. We certainly appreciate it. It is now 7:22, and Councilor Whitfield, I know, is monitoring the clock. We have 8 minutes. Just along those lines, though, Che, before we move on, if you can also look into what it is that we can do in terms of collaborating with code enforcement, who at times issue tickets to folks, especially, around some real substantial issues that folks have with respect to housing that folks don't always have the money to pay for. And, once they start, oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but sometimes these houses can end up in receivership. And ultimately, once it ends up in receivership, it is extremely difficult for those homeowners to have the resources to make the critical repairs and ultimately get their houses back. So
another great point, Councilor Hurst, and we are definitely looking into that as well. And we want to be able to work with the homeowners that are not only homeowners that live in the home, but homeowners that are in the city of Springfield. Now we have plenty of homeowners who don't live in the city, and that's going to be a different issue that we'll have to figure out. But the homeowners that are owner occupied and own in the city, we're looking to alleviate some of those situations with code enforcement and to work with our residents who are homeowners as far as upgrades and updates to their properties need to go.
Thank you so much. We have
I
two
think that's
remaining.
fantastic because I just do want to piggyback off of Councilor Hurst because it's a good point. And when I was originally campaigning and I was going to some of the senior homes, they couldn't afford the repairs. And receivership is just a way to take our properties. And it was always a majority of the time in the Black and brown communities that couldn't afford it. And so please, please, please look into that and give us an update as counselors so we can communicate that back to the community.
Definitely. That's something Attorney Moore and again, Economic Development Director Tim Sheehan and CFO TJ Plante, we've been working on and definitely want to provide that relief and assistance to our city residents and our homeowners.
Thank you. We have two more speakers remaining, and I do see Ms. Parks has her hand up. So we will go to Ayanna Crawford, followed by, I believe it's
Melon Menace.
Okay, all right, Melon. And then Ms. Parks, if there's time, we'll circle back to you. So Ayanna, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Councilor Hurst and Whitfield, for putting this on. I think it's important that the community understands how this process works. And certainly thank you to the city for allowing the community to hear this information. Again, thank you so very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ayanna.
Thank you. And we will now move to Melon or Maylene. I apologize if I'm messing your name. Floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. I apologize. I actually asked the question in an email. Did you happen to get that? I didn't think I
No,
was.
but can you say it so for the edification of the rest of the people in case it's the same question? Thank you.
Absolutely. So my question was, how are we going to make sure that these funds are allocated equally? For instance, are you allocating a certain amount to sports organizations, a certain amounts to churches, or is it really based on the amount that they request? And I think you already answered whether or not, if we do apply for a certain dollar amount and it may be too excessive, will you be counter offering maybe a lower amount? And will there be checks and balances and audits to make sure that the funds are being distributed equally?
So when we say distributed equally, there's no process through the RFPs that are going to guarantee that the funds are distributed equally. So what is going to happen is that the funds are going to go out on a demand basis. So the process is designed to have the demand come in, be recognized, and have the funding go to that demand. So a couple of people have spoken to the idea and the importance of making sure the word gets out to every population in the city that they can apply for these grant funds, that they're going to be eligible if they go through some simple steps to access the funding. So there will be extensive audits of the program. The Treasury Department, I'm 100% certain, will conduct a full federal audit. And I know that just our city, auditing process will have eyes on this program every year that we spend money through it. So there will be a check and balance to determine, if money is being spent somehow inappropriately. It'll get identified, and it'll be something that comes up relatively quickly in the process. Part of my job is to be sort of the referee and try to make sure that the end result of the process is exactly as the act wants it to be, which is, as I've said before, and I think a couple other speakers said more eloquently, to not just combat the impacts of COVID-19, that's essential for certain, but it's also to, combat the impacts on the disproportionately impacted populations. And again, not just impacts from the virus and the pandemic, but pre-existing, conditions being exacerbated by the pandemic and trying to rectify those. So that's really, one of the fundamental guiding principles of spending of the money. And that's something that's ingrained within our solicitations. And it's certainly something that we're taking extremely seriously. So the results will be, the results as they come out, and that's data that we're going to be reporting in real time as best as possible. So when we're 6 months into the program, you'll see how many minority business owners receive funding. You'll see how many non-minority business owners receive funding. You'll see how many, how many grants were awarded within a certain neighborhood. All that's going to be tracked and reported. So as we go through it, people will be able to see the numbers, and people will be able to ask questions, and people will be able to look at the reporting that's generated and see, is it in fact doing what we're talking about right now? And is it having the result we're looking for? And part of that process is going to dictate what we do with our RFPs. So, there's a lot of rights that are reserved within these types of documents, which allow us to, as the speaker said very correctly, offer less than the requested amount to someone. So you can be asking for the moon and the stars, but we probably can't give everybody even close to that. So what we're going to do is give as much as we can to make a project successful, like I kind of referenced, so that the money's not wasted and the money's getting the impact that it needs to. But we need to be careful that we don't push too much money out the door, where we're in a position a couple of years from now where we've committed this money, and we've committed more money than we should have, so we wouldn't have any in reserve to spend on good proposals, say, that come in the year 2023. So what we're going to do is try to hold money in reserve as best as possible and monitor the process as it's going forward, and then adjust it as necessary to try to make sure that the money gets to the places we want it to go, and that it has the impact that it needs to have. So I hope that's the best way I can answer that question today. And I hope that's a close enough answer to what you were looking for.
And I just wanted to add, thank you, Attorney Moore, for that. I just wanted to add, I think the better answer is not an equal but fair process. It's going to be a fair process. And not only do we have the auditing department, I hold weekly American Rescue Plan Act fund meetings with Tom. Che comes if needed, with the finance department, and we go over how the money is being spent. And so that's another way to hold the city accountable and to make sure that the funds are spent. They're also going to post this information. It is public knowledge, who's getting the funds. And like you said, it can be broken down by women, gender, age, neighborhoods, all the things that we want to consider fair. And yes, it is a multi-year grant. The question was, can people apply for multi-years of the funding? So can they apply for one program, but say we fund it for over 2 years or over 3 years? And that will be our final question.
Yes, it can be applied. That is correct. So if you're looking for programming, you say, I want to run this program, and it's going to take me 24 months in my proposal. It's a 2-year program. We need funding for it. That is eligible. Yes.
And if I could just, if I could just add to that last point that I think folks so eloquently touched on, is that, one thing that I like about the intent of the federal government, as I see it, in terms of the distribution of these funds, is that they're looking for these funds to be spent equitably and not necessarily equally, because we know that the impacts of COVID-19 were astronomically devastating to certain populations, whether it comes to small businesses of color, whether it comes to women-owned businesses, whether it comes to women who left the workforce because they had to care for their children. We know that there has been a disproportionate impact to folks of color, communities of color, and certainly women as well. And so, my hope is that when we assess how it is that we're spending the money after year 1 and year 2, that it is spent in those areas that the federal government has designated, because we know they have been disproportionately impacted. And so I want to see that it's equitably spent as opposed to equally spent, if that makes sense. So with that said,
great comment,
Councilor Whitfield, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out.
So we just want to thank you, Councilor Hurst and I, for spending this hour and 34 minutes with us. We are so grateful to have had all of you. We are so, so grateful to have Director Swan, Attorney Moore, Focus Springfield, and of course, all of you, because your input and your questions are so valuable. They help me understand the process more. So I'm hoping that they help everybody else understand the process more. And so I'm just going to say thank you for joining us, and I'll give the team final comments.
Thank you for having us. We're excited about the process. We're excited to get to work and to see what valuable ideas and innovative ideas that the city residents have, the small business community, nonprofit community. So thank you for having us, and we're ready to work.
Thank you, councilors. We really appreciate it. And we just encourage everybody to keep a listen for the RFPs being released. And, we look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Focus Springfield. Thank you, Attorney Moore. Thank you, Che. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you to the administration who has lent you all to us, and you have always been available. Regardless of the time of day, you all are working around the clock to ensure that folks get the information that they need to take advantage of these funds. And last but not least, thank you, Councilor Whitfield. These two sessions have been very informative. I'm sure not only to our residents who are watching, those who are here, but also to myself. So we appreciate it. And this is truly how government is supposed to work.
Thank you.